After being cut from his high school basketball team, he went home, locked himself in his room, and cried. He wasn't able to speak until he was almost 4 years old, and his teachers said he would never amount to much. Was demoted from her job as a news anchor because she wasn't fit for television. Fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination and having no original ideas. At age 11, he was cut from his team after being diagnosed with a growth hormone deficiency, which made him smaller in stature than most kids his age. At 30 years old, he was left devastated and depressed after being unceremoniously removed from the company he started. A high school dropout whose personal struggles with drugs and poverty culminated in an unsuccessful suicide attempt. A teacher told him he was too stupid to learn anything and that he should go into a field where he might succeed by virtue of his pleasant personality. Rejected by Decca Recording Studios, who said, "We don't like their sound. They have no future in show business." His first book was rejected by 27 publishers. His fiancée died, failed in business, had a nervous breakdown, and was defeated in 8 elections. If you've never failed, you've never tried anything new.
So how do we fortify our psyche to ride the waves of adversity rather than being pulled under the torrent? How is it that some people handle incredible amounts of stress while others quickly fall apart? The fact that people differ so dramatically in their responses to stressful events has prompted many psychologists to search for personal and environmental factors that make people less reactive to stressful events. Resiliency is the ability to tolerate and thrive in highly stressful circumstances. The fact that people differ so dramatically in their responses to stressful events has prompted many psychologists to search for personal and environmental factors that make people less reactive to stressful events. Some protective factors are environmental or personal resources that can create resilience, help people to cope more effectively with stressful events. They may include things like physiological reactivity, social support, effective coping skills, personality factors such as hardiness, coping self-efficacy, optimism, emotional expressiveness, and an ability to find meaning in stressful events. In this mini lecture, I want to concentrate on 3 things: social support, coping self-efficacy, and optimism. Knowing that we can rely on somebody in times of need is one of the most important environmental resources when it comes to resiliency. For example, in an international study of some 37,000 people over 12 years, people with weak social ties were twice as likely to die during the period of study as those with strong ties to others. One way social support protects against stress is that it enhances immune functioning. But social support may confer resilience to stress by enabling people to feel like they are part of a wider group, which provides more sense of meaning and identity in their lives. It reduces their exposure to risk factors such as loneliness. By having the help of others in times of need can increase their sense of control over the stressor as well. Moreover, true friends can apply social pressure to prevent people from coping with stressors in a maladaptive way. Moreover, the type of social support seems to be important in conferring resilience to stress. In a sample of childhood sexual abuse survivors, a combination of self-esteem support, the individual perceives that he or she is valued by others, and appraisal support, that's where the individual perceives that he or she is capable of getting advice when coping with difficulties, was most useful in preventing the development of post-traumatic stress disorder. Coping self-efficacy is a person's perceived ability to cope effectively with life challenges. If you believe that you can successfully cope with demands placed on you, even if they are extremely demanding, it may generate only a little bit of stress if you feel that you can cope with it. Now, high coping self-efficacy has been related to improved psychological adjustment to abortion, improved coping with physical assault, improved immune functioning, lower catecholamine responsivity, and reduced blood pressure response. Coping self-efficacy has also been correlated with better psychological adjustment following severe environmental stressors, such as volcanic eruptions, hurricanes, and military combat. Given that one of the most important appraisals we make is whether we have sufficient resources to deal with demands, small wonder that coping self-efficacy is an important protective factor when it comes to resilience. So how can we increase self-efficacy? Well, firstly, the experience of mastery influences your perspective on your abilities. Successful experiences lead to greater feelings of self-efficacy. However, failing to deal with a task or challenge can also undermine and weaken self-efficacy. You can also increase self-efficacy or coping self-efficacy through vicarious experiences. Observing someone else perform a task or handle a situation can help you perform the same task by imitation. And if you succeed in performing a task, you're likely to think that you will succeed as well, if the task is not too difficult. Observing people who are similar to yourself succeed will increase your beliefs that you can master a similar activity. Then there's verbal persuasion. So you can increase self-efficacy through verbal persuasion. When other people encourage and convince you to perform a task, you tend to believe that you're more capable of performing that task. Constructive feedback is important in maintaining a sense of efficacy, as it may help overcome self-doubt. Another way to increase self-efficacy is feel like you have a sense of control over your physiological states. So moods, emotions, physical reactions and stress levels may influence how you feel about your personal abilities. If you're extremely nervous, for example, you may begin to doubt and develop a weak sense of self-efficacy in that particular activity. If you are confident and feel less anxiety or nervousness, you may experience a sense of excitement that fosters a greater sense of self-efficacy. It's the way that people interpret and evaluate emotional states that's important for how they develop self-efficacy beliefs. For this reason, being able to diminish or control anxiety may have a positive impact on self-efficacy beliefs. A positive mental attitude helps you to cope with stress. Adopting a positive way of thinking is a good protector against the effects of stress. As Winston Churchill said, the pessimist sees difficult in every opportunity. The optimist sees opportunity in every difficulty. I was sitting down to dinner the other night when my friend's son, who knows I'm a psychologist, told me a joke about a little boy who always had a positive mental attitude. The little boy was always optimistic and upbeat, yet his older sister always seemed to look on the negative side of life. Now, one Christmas, just to be a pain, the sister decided to aggravate her little brother and test his positive outlook by giving him a present of a box filled with horse manure. Now, she was sick and tired of her little brother's continual positive attitude and thought that this would fix him. When Christmas Day arrived, the little boy opened up the present and saw the horse manure and inside and exclaimed, "Yippee! Where's the horse?" Okay, so maybe you had to be sitting around the table to enjoy the joke as much as I did, but what a positive mental attitude. Staying positive may sound easier than it actually is. You only need to turn on the television or browse the internet and see the latest negative news and sensationalised headlines. However, staying positive is a decision that's ultimately yours to take and make. But let's be clear here. People who adopt a positive mental attitude are not being like Pollyanna with no hold on reality. They're simply making a choice to see reality from a different perspective. However, here's a warning. There is some evidence that people who are unrealistically positive do not have their expectations matched with reality, and that this can result in pessimism and poorer skills for coping with stress. So the way that one interprets events is developed in childhood and adolescence, and it stems directly from your view of your place in the world, whether you think you're valuable and deserving or worthless and hopeless. Seligman coined this phrase explanatory style, and it refers to the way we internally respond to and explain both the good and bad events that occur in our lives. The concept of explanatory style is applicable to all performance, and in particular competitive performance, where setbacks, obstacles and disappointments occur constantly, and yet performers' outlook should remain optimistic in order that they retain confidence and want to continue investing time and energy. According to Seligman in 1991, explanatory style determines whether an individual is an optimist or a pessimist. Now, Seligman's done much research as to why people respond in such different ways to adversity and success. Some people are crushed by adversity while others thrive in similar circumstances. Some use success as a stepping stone to greater things, while others fail to achieve anything like their potential. For instance, explanatory style for school students is important for learning. Martin Seligman came to Australia to work with Melbourne Grammar and other schools in Victoria. He and his colleagues have been setting up a program to enable teachers and students to develop an effective explanatory style, as this will lead to more resilient and optimistic students. Developing an optimistic explanatory style has to do with permanence, pervasiveness and personalisation. So permanence. Permanence is the degree to which one feels events will repeat themselves and continue to affect one's life, either negatively or positively. A person with an optimistic explanatory style will usually assume that a positive event or success will repeat itself over and over, rather than assume success was just luck. That same person will tend to respond to negative events or setbacks with the explanation that it was temporary and just a one-off. Whereas a person with a negative explanatory style will assume that a positive event or success was just a fluke, and that the same person will tend to respond to a negative event or failure believing that this happens all the time. Pervasiveness. This is the degree to which one feels that a particular experience will generalise to other contexts. The optimistic person tends to assume that a positive event is universal and to be expected, but that mistakes or difficulties are specific and will remain confined to the original event. The more pessimistic person will tend to assume that a breakdown in one part of their performance is pervasive and going to spread to other parts, and that any successes they have are specific and limited to their original context. Personalisation. This is the degree to which a person sees him or herself as a primary causal agent in the event. Optimistic people will internalise their success and take personal credit for it, and will protect their confidence by explaining their misfortune as a result of events outside of their control. More pessimistic people will externalise their success and see it as a function of luck and circumstance rather than personal actions, whereas they see losses as due to personal shortcomings. So a person with an optimistic and resilient attitude, so high optimism, explains the good and bad events that happen to them in the following way. For example, a person with high optimism succeeds at an important exam. The reasons for passing an important exam with distinction may be seen as permanent. It's usually like this. Succeeding is natural and normal. Pervasive or universal. I'm usually successful at everything I do. And internalisation. The key factor in this result is that I put in a lot of work. For example, a person with high optimism fails at an important exam. The reasons for failing an important exam, well, they might see it as temporary. This was a unique one-off result and the reasons won't last long. They will see it as specific. There are specific factors affecting this event and they don't usually apply. And they'll externalise. The key factors affecting this result were outside my control and I gave 100%. A person with a less resilient attitude, so low optimism, has a very different way of explaining good and bad events that happen to them. For example, the reasons for passing an important exam with distinction. They may see it as temporary. This state of affairs won't last. The reason for my success will go away quickly. It's luck. They may see it as specific. This was a unique one-off event. My reasons for succeeding won't affect any other part of my life. And they may externalise their success. This has happened mainly because of factors outside of my control. Similarly, they will see reasons for failing an important exam quite differently to the optimist as well. The low in optimism will see reasons for failing an important exam as more permanent. Permanent is usually like this. The reason for this failure won't go away very quickly, they might say to themselves. They'll see it probably as more, or they'll be more inclined to see it as pervasive or universal. The whole of life is like this. The reason for my failure affects many other parts of my life too, they may say. And they're more likely to internalise. I'm completely to blame for this, for it being like this, they might say to themselves. A performer's tendency to interpret events along these dimensions is learned and reinforced through experience. By learning techniques of self-talk and selective perception and then practicing them regularly, people can systematically cultivate optimism and gain confidence. But beware of excessive optimism. One study by Kirchenbaum, O'Connor and Owens in 1999 found that individuals can be overly optimistic, having such positive illusions about their skill and control that they make poor decisions. One study that looked at optimism and longevity amongst the elderly. Some dread the ageing process while others accept or even find value in it. Over a 23-year period, research has shown that a relation between positive or negative self-perceptions of one's ageing and some subsequent longevity is related. These survival curves show the likelihood that a randomly selected group member will still be alive in a given year after the beginning of the study. The median number of years until death was 15 in the group with the negative attitudes and 22.6 among the positive attitude participants. What this means is that on average, people with a positive attitude toward their ageing lived an estimated 7.6 years longer than their counterparts with negative attitudes. Why are some people able to withstand and even flourish under stressful life circumstances, whereas others fall prey to even minor stressors? In this mini lecture, I've touched on the topic of resilience. I've looked briefly, very briefly, at social support, coping self-efficacy, and developing an optimistic explanatory style as factors that influence a person's resilience to stress and adversity.